The screen flickered. Just static most times, a ghost of what used to be. But now, bits of data fought their way through the broken airwaves. A weather map, smeared and distorted, showed something massive eating into the eastern seaboard. I looked at it, then at Lily. She sat next to me, hunched over a beat-up comic book, still trying to make out the panels in the dim light. "Another one," I mumbled, mostly to myself. "They always exaggerate." Lily didn't look up, but her voice was a little shaky, a whisper against the low hum of the emergency radio. "But this one looks bigger than last October's, Dad." I just grunted, reaching out to ruffle her hair. It was getting long, tangled. We hadn't cut it in months, either of us. "They always say that, kiddo. Just stay calm." I didn't want to think about October. Didn't want to think about anything but getting these damned boards up. The house, our house, it felt like a bunker. We'd spent weeks, months, making it one. Every window, every door. I'd seen what was out there. We all had. The old threats. But this was different. The radio kept talking about water, so much water. A superstorm. My mind kept trying to switch gears, from the shuffling, groaning things outside to the sheer, unthinking power of nature. It messed with my head. I focused on the wood, the nails, the satisfying thud of the hammer. A tangible thing, a barrier. I was on the last downstairs window, sweating despite the chill creeping in from the approaching storm. My hands ached. Lily, bless her, brought me a bottle of the salvaged water, barely a few mouthfuls left. I swallowed hard, the taste metallic. That's when I noticed the smell. It wasn't the usual decay from the outside, nor the musty smell of an old house that's been boarded up for ages. This was damp, yes, but also a raw, fishy tang, like something had died in the river and then sat for a week. I wrinkled my nose. "Dad?" Lily's voice was small, cautious. She was standing by the kitchen door now, peering into the gloom. "Do you hear that?" I listened. The wind was starting to pick up, a low whistle around the eaves. Nothing else. "What is it, kiddo?" "That sound, like water boiling, but it's not." She hugged herself, her eyes wide. I strained my ears again. Just the wind. Maybe a slight, persistent, high-pitched whine that I couldn't quite place. Probably just something in the house. My ears had been ringing for years anyway, just general stress, I guess. I shook my head, trying to clear it. "Just the wind, honey. Gusts." My hand, resting on the window frame I was about to board up, felt sticky. Not just wet from the rain starting to whip against the glass, but something slick, almost greasy. I pulled my hand back, wiped it on my jeans, and looked at the residue. It was a faint, greenish tint. I stared at it. Couldn't be, right? Just algae? Something from the old wood? I told myself that. Had to. The storm hit harder than anything I'd ever seen, even on the news feeds that barely made it through. Wind howled like a banshee, screaming around the old house. Rain hammered the walls, lashed the boarded windows. Glass rattled. I kept thinking about the boards, hoping they'd hold. Worry about the rain, stay alert for the things. Two fronts, that's how it always felt now. Power went out a while ago. It always did. The emergency lanterns threw long, dancing shadows. Lily was curled up on the sofa beside me, head buried in her comic, but I knew she wasn't reading, just hiding. We both were. Then a heavy thud from the front door. Not a gust of wind, not a branch. Something solid. It made the whole frame shudder. Then, a wet, scraping sound right against the wood. My heart jumped. It felt like something was trying to push its way in, dragging itself. I carefully moved towards the window, the one I hadn't finished boarding up yet. The bottom right corner wasn't quite flush. I nudged the loose board with my foot. Just a tiny crack. I had to see. Outside, it was chaos. Water. So much water. The street was gone, swallowed. My old Jeep in the driveway was half submerged, tilted at an odd angle. And then I saw it. A dark, misshapen shadow, bloated and slow, drifting past. It wasn't walking. It was just there, carried by the water that was already much higher than I thought it should be. Parts of its skin, pale and slick, looked like they were sloughing off in chunks, hanging loose, swaying with the murky currents, like wet paper. A sound, a low, guttural growl, but it sounded different, muffled, distorted, like a rough gargle echoing through water, a crushing sound, like stones grinding together. It was close, too close. Lily gasped, pointing. Her voice was a strangled yell. "It's looking at us, Dad! It's looking!" I slammed the board back against the window, pressing hard, trying to keep it in place. My hands were shaking. "No, honey, it's not. It's just floating by. It can't see us." It was a lie. I knew it was, but I had to say it. I stood there for a long time, back against the boarded window, trying to catch my breath, trying to calm the frantic hammering in my chest. Slowly, I moved again, pressing my eye to the tiny crack I'd just created, a sliver of vision. The water was everywhere. The houses across the street were just roofs, jutting like islands. My neighbor's garbage bin, the big green one, was floating by, bumping against parked cars, bobbing like something alive. Disgusting. The whole neighborhood was gone, our house marooned. "How are we gonna get out of this?" I mumbled, the words catching in my throat. We always had contingency plans for the things, for escape routes. But this water, it made every exit just another barrier. It wasn't just cutting us off, it was connecting us to whatever was out there, to whatever was in the water. A cold, hard fact settled deep in my gut. I ran my hand along the bottom of the wall, checking the panels, the sealant I'd put down. Water was a merciless enemy. My fingers brushed against a small hole, roughly gnawed through the drywall. Rats. Always rats. I probed it, trying to figure out if it was a new breach. My fingers closed around something papery, soft with age and dampness. I pulled it out. It was an old map, yellowed, crumpled, a faded street map of our neighborhood, probably from before I was born. And right there, crudely circled in red crayon, was the old pumping station. Abandoned for decades, they said. A local landmark no one really paid attention to anymore. Just a decaying brick building down by the old creek bed, mostly overgrown and forgotten. I looked out the window again, the roiling brown water. It had swallowed the creek bed, swallowed the road, swallowed everything. The pumping station would be completely underwater now. Lily was struggling with something. She had found an old waterlogged newspaper under a stack of board game boxes. She was holding it close to the lantern, trying to decipher the faded print. "Dad," she said, her voice thin, "it says here 1987, an incident at the pumping station. Fears of untreated chemical waste, leaking."
I whipped around, my eyes locking onto the map in my hand, then out the window at the vast, churning expanse of water. A shiver, icy and unwelcome, crawled up my spine. It wasn't just the storm. It wasn't just the water. The water, it wasn't just bringing current trouble. It was unearthing something. Something old, buried, something that had been sleeping. A strange fizzing sound. It was faint at first, barely a whisper against the wind and the relentless rain. My skin felt suddenly cold, clammy. I looked down. Water, a dark, oily sheen, was seeping from under the kitchen door, already up to my ankles. The floorboards were creaking with a terrible, submerged groan. I took a step towards it, my boots squishing in the rising water. It felt thick, heavy, not like regular flood water. Then, the surface of the water in the doorway exploded. A pale, distended hand shot out, grabbing my ankle. It was slick, rubbery, like old wet vinyl, and strong, so strong. I stumbled back, splashing, my feet sliding on the submerged floor. The thing pulled, dragging me down. Its grip was like glue, a vice. My own strength felt useless, washed away by the water surrounding me. The floor, usually so solid, was now an unreliable, shifting surface. A low, liquid gargle erupted from somewhere under the murky water. Then a head, lopsided and somehow too large for its neck, broke the surface. Its eyes, milky white, stared straight at me. A void. My scream was raw, tearing from my throat. I kicked, desperate, trying to dislodge its grip. Hard, I heard a crunch, a terrible, sickening crack from its arm. But it didn't let go. It just surged higher, moving faster, the water around it churning. Its teeth, long and stained, were chattering, not with cold, but with something else. It wanted me.
I fumbled, my hands closing around the heavy lead flashlight still clutched from earlier. I swung it, a wild, panicked arc. It connected with a sickening thud against the side of its head. The rotten flesh gave, then healed around the dent. Its milky eyes rolled back for a second, a brief, blessed pause. That was my chance. I scrambled back, pulling Lily with me, her cries muffled against my shoulder. We stumbled up the stairs, taking them two at a time, the water below already lapping at the first step. I risked a glance back. The zombie had sunk, disappearing back into the dark torrent, leaving only concentric ripples on the surface. But I knew it was still there, right under the dark water, waiting. We made it to the second floor, gasping for air that felt thin, metallic. I pushed a heavy armchair against the landing door, not that it would do much, just a gesture. Lily was shaking uncontrollably, her face pressed into my side. The house was strangely quiet now. No more thuds, no more scrapes. Only the relentless drumming of rain against the roof and the frantic hammering of my own heart in my ears. I stared out the window. Nothing but a blurry, watery expanse. It was dark, a deep, bruised purple, stretching to where the sky used to be. Then, from somewhere below, from the dark, cold depths of the water that had swallowed our first floor, a faint buzzing sound. Like a swarm of insects, tiny and agitated, moving under the surface. It was almost inaudible at first, then it grew, morphing into a low, deep growl, a rumble that vibrated through the very structure of the house, up into my bones. I pulled Lily tighter against me. A cold dread,
colder than the water now touching the first step, wrapped around my chest, squeezing. Outside, under the murky surface, a large, indistinct shadow seemed to slice through the water, moving with an eerie speed. It wasn't drifting anymore. It was moving with purpose, and it was heading straight here. "Does it know we're here?" Lily whispered, her voice barely a breath against my shirt. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. The answer was already clear. The buzzing turned into a hum, then a low thrum that didn't just fill the air. It vibrated through the floorboards, up my legs, up my spine, like the entire house was a cheap speaker pushed too hard. Lily was still pressed against me, shaking. I just held her, staring out the window, or trying to. Water, indistinguishable from the bruised purple sky. "It's moving," Lily whispered, her voice so small I almost missed it against the growing rumble. She was right. The shadow I'd seen, the indistinct mass, it wasn't just drifting anymore. It was pulling itself through the murky water, straight for us. A wake of debris, bobbing planks and garbage, flowed behind it. I could hear it now, too, distinct from the wind and heavy rain, a kind of slurping sound, like a giant tongue licking at the surface. I tried to swallow, but my throat was dry, so dry. I looked away from the window, scanned the second floor, our sanctuary. Now just a higher point on a sinking ship, I guess. Nothing was safe. Nothing had ever been. Back then, I remember looking at the living room wall. It was just there, a small patch of greenish-gray mold, about the size of my thumb. Not too bad, you know, just damp. The storm, the humidity, it all made sense. I mean, we'd been boarded up for months, and now with the flood, the whole place was a giant soaked sponge. I figured I'd get a rag, some bleach, take care of it later. Just another thing on the endless list. But then, I don't know why, something made me look again. Maybe it was Lily's quiet breathing next to me, or the persistent hum from downstairs that was starting to feel wrong. That little patch of mold. It was bigger, measurably. I remember thinking, no way, my eyes are playing tricks. But it wasn't. It was elongated now, reaching out like a vine, a pale, sickly green against the faded wallpaper. It was crawling, slowly, like it had a will of its own. It made my stomach clench, a cold, oily feeling. I stared at it, frozen. "Dad?" Lily's voice, a thin thread, tugged me back. She was pointing at the wall, too, her little finger trembling. "It's growing." I just grunted, trying to sound authoritative. "Just the damp, honey. Nothing to worry about. Just bad mold." Bad mold. What a joke. The sound from downstairs was different now. Less like a hum, more like a wet, slurping gurgle.
And there was a new smell, too, competing with the general rot and mildew. Something metallic, like old blood mixed with stagnant pond water. Sharp. It hurt my nose. We needed supplies. It was a stupid thought, I know. Downstairs was a death trap. But we were running low on everything. Water, the few canned goods we still hoarded. I had to go. Lily was huddled in a corner, clutching her comic book, pretending to read. I told her to stay put, told her I'd be quick. Every step down felt like a descent into some kind of murky hell. The water downstairs, it just kept rising. It was up to my waist now, dark, oily, filled with floating debris. Chairs, broken tables, things I couldn't even identify.
Visibility was zero. I stretched my hands out, feeling my way along the wall, searching for the kitchen. My boots made a squelching sound with every step, the water cold enough to numb my legs. I could hear things moving under the surface, things bumping into furniture, making muffled thuds. Probably just more trash, I told myself. Just trash. Then my hand brushed against something soft, something that didn't feel like wood or plastic or fabric. It was yielding, like a sack of old wet leaves. But then it stiffened, hardened almost, and twitched, a quick, violent spasm that made me pull my hand back like the thing had bitten me. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drum in the silence of the submerged floor. I heard a small, sharp click, 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 like tiny claws scraping on the waterlogged base of a cabinet. It wasn't the kind of sound a rat would make, too distinct, too deliberate. I froze, holding my breath, straining my ears. The sound moved, under the water, near what I guessed was the fridge. And then a shadow, darker than the water itself, detached itself from the mangled form of what had once been a zombie, pinning it against the appliance. It wasn't human, not even close. It was a bunch of things, a mess. Like a tangled bundle of roots, pale and slender, but moving with purpose. Thousands of them, or maybe just dozens, all writhing, propelling themselves through the water. It was fast, unbelievably fast. It didn't have a head, not really. Just a mass of those root-like limbs, slick with what looked like mucus. It moved, a disgusting blur, right past my leg. I didn't yell, couldn't, just a choked gasp. It was so close I felt something brush my skin, a burning sensation, like a jellyfish sting, trailing along my calf. I stumbled back, splashing, my boots slipping on what felt like a thin, greasy film covering the floorboards. "What the hell was that?" I mumbled, mostly just to hear my own voice. My skin crawled. Every hair on my body stood on end. It just disappeared back into the murky depths, leaving nothing but ripples that quickly flattened. But I knew it was still there, lurking. Then the house shuddered, a huge, booming crump that vibrated through the remaining structure. The whole second floor swayed. Lily screamed from upstairs. I looked towards the front of the house, where the main windows had taken such a beating. The water outside, it didn't just flow, it surged, like a dam had broken, or some immense force was pushing it. A wave, a powerful current of brown, roiling floodwater, slammed into the already weakened walls. It erupted into the house, not seeping anymore, flowing, rushing, breaking. The water level inside shot up, covering my chest in an instant, and with it a tidal wave of bodies. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds. Bloated, deformed things, pale and glistening like forgotten fish. They were swept through the breaches, crashing into furniture, into the remaining walls. Some just drifted, eyes milky and blank, but others thrashed, like giant waterlogged puppets, struggling as they were pulled through the narrow gaps. They used their arms, swollen and grotesque, to paddle clumsily, kicking their legs. Like dead fish, just as I'd seen them from the window earlier. They stuck to the furniture, tangled in the debris, slowly making their way further inside, carried by the current. The ceiling above me, the floor of the second story, groaned. A long, drawn-out grind. Plaster dust rained down. Hairline cracks split open, not just on the ceiling, but snaking down the walls. I could hear the beams protesting, groaning under the immense weight and pressure. This house, our bunker, our fortress, it was a death trap, literally. It was breaking apart around us.
"We have to go, Lily," I screamed, my voice raw, cracking. I didn't care if the words carried through the storm or if anything else heard me. "We go now, or we die." I looked up, towards the staircase, where I knew she was huddled in the doorway. Her eyes were red, swollen, but she nodded. A single, desperate nod. The plank. I had it ready. A large, thick piece of plywood reinforced with some old 2x4s I'd salvaged. Not much, but it was something. Our one chance. I pushed Lily onto it, holding her steady. We had to break through. I found the window I'd pushed back together earlier, the one I hadn't fully boarded. It was shattered, just barely holding its shape. I used my shoulder, slamming into it again and again, until the remaining glass and frame gave way with a sickening shing. The current outside was a monster. It grabbed the plank, tearing at it. I shoved it out, clinging to one end, pushing Lily with it. The water tried to tear me away, pulling me down, dragging me into the churning abyss. I grasped the broken window frame, my fingers raw against the splintered wood. My muscles screamed. For a second, just a split second, I wondered if this was it. Trading a slow, drowning death inside for a swift, brutal one outside. What was the point, really? My hand slipped. I felt myself being dragged, helpless, utterly, completely helpless. We made it, barely. Lily was on the plank, somehow. I pulled myself onto it, gasping for air, water streaming from my face. We were adrift, surrounded by the chaos. Houses across the street were just shapes, fading into the gloom. The sky was turning that deep, bruised purple again, the sun giving up its fight. Night was coming, and nothing had saved us. Water splashed my face, stinging my eyes. The plank was listing, swaying wildly. Lily screamed again, her voice a ragged, raw sound against the wind. Her arm, skinny and trembling, pointed down, under the plank. I looked. The wood, waterlogged and dark, was moving. Not the movement of the water current, no, something else. A thin, greenish layer, slick and fluid, like a membranous skin, was covering the underside of the plank. It was undulating, pulsating, and it was guiding us. Slowly, but with a horrifying certainty, it was steering our makeshift raft, weaving through the floating bodies, the wrecked cars, the debris of our old world. It was like no wood at all, like a living thing, a slow, monstrous thing. "It's not just in the water, Dad," Lily whispered, her voice barely there, just a rasp of air drawn from deep inside her. "It's everywhere." I looked at my hands. The green, slimy film, it was on them. Not just from the water, no, it was spreading, weaving through the creases of my skin, clinging, like a second skin that didn't belong, crawling. The sun was gone. The world was just dark, bruised water. No signs of anything, no rescue. Just the lapping of the water against the plank, the occasional shriek of the wind. I held Lily close, tried to tell her it would be okay. A lie, a desperate, pathetic lie. Then, from beneath us, from the deep, dark water that had swallowed everything we knew, a sound. Not a zombie growl, not the sloshing of the current. It was a dry click, 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 like long, brittle fingernails scraping against a wooden hull. Just there, right beneath us.
A dark shadow, indistinct but palpable, slid past under the plank. I felt a cold dread, colder than the water now seeping into my very bones, run down my spine. The nightmare hadn't ended. It had just begun a new chapter. The world had changed, and the things that hunted us, they were so much worse now. Not just in the water, not just in the shadows. They were under the very thing that kept us afloat. I looked into the black water. If we survive this, then what